I have been a coin collector for as long as I could remember and have amassed a pretty decent collection over the years. It wasn't until I retired from my career in the military that I had enough personal time to start taking a closer look and interest in our world. And what I was discovering began to instill a fear that I had never known before, a fear of uncertainty. You see, until this time, I had never questioned the integrity or whether my country could maintain its solvency. I always considered that what I was seeing in the media was generally at its face value, a true representation of current events. I had no real reason to believe otherwise. Thanks to alternate media sources, I began to catch wind of accusations and stories which were telling a very different tale about my government and the world economy. I was appalled and didn't believe it, not for a second. After all, the internet is filled with crazy kooks and conspiracy theorists, right? So I began to seek the truth, and it was during this crusade for the truth that I began to catch glimpses of another picture, another perception of reality, another realm where everything that I took for granted as absolute fact, things I was taught by teachers, my parents, and even presumed facts published in ink may not actually be. I'm the type of person who is not easily swayed. It takes solid evidence and logic for me to reverse my position on a matter, and my crusade for the truth began to do just that. I believe I now have much more clarity when it comes to world governments and economies. By no means am I anything close to an expert on the subject, but my driven desire to obtain knowledge has afforded me the opportunity to learn, and the more I learn, the more questions I have, resulting in more research to obtain those answers, which in turn generated even more questions, and so on. The global economy and most of its currencies are hinged or tightly tethered to the US dollar, and the US dollar is in big trouble. Although nothing is for sure, most believe that the US dollar is no longer sustainable and its collapse is inevitable. It has been propped up or rescued time after time by quantitative easing, which is basically the insurgence of more printed money into the economy, which provides a false strength in the currency. Then there is the US stock market, which also has played an important part in the dollar's survival thus far, by market manipulating and controlling the flow of money into and out of the markets via buying and selling of ETFs has resulted in an unnatural overvalue of stocks and an undervalued price for commodities such as precious metals, and all of this helps to sustain the appearance that the dollar is solid and stable when in fact it's quite the opposite. According to the Board of Governors for the Federal Reserve System, there was approximately $1.54 trillion in circulation as of 5 April 2017, of which $1.49 trillion was in Federal Reserve notes or printed dollars. The U.S. national debt is over $20 trillion. That is a debt of over $165,000 for every taxpayer. So what will happen when the dollar collapses? Basically, the value of the US dollar plummets. Anyone who holds dollar-denominated assets will sell them at any cost. That includes foreign governments who own US treasuries. It also affects foreign exchange futures traders. But never forget, it also includes the individual investors. Retirement accounts, even checking and savings accounts can be affected. When the crash occurs, everyone will scramble to dump any assets valued in dollars for just about anything not denominated in dollars so they can protect their wealth. This panic market sell-off will only further feed the fear and doubt which will ensure the dollar's demise. What we need to look out for is the triggers that begin this cascade. Some refer to it as the black swan event. It could be a natural disaster such as a hurricane, earthquake, or tsunami. It might be triggered by a global economic event, but more probably will occur when the cabal decides it's ready to start the next world war, which will take our already weakened global economy and push it over the edge. Think about it. As much as we are struggling today, imagine if we had to crank up our war machine. There is just no more room for more debt. The dollar will pop, and consequently, all other global currencies measured by the dollar will go down with it. There is really no way of preventing it, with one exception. Imagine for a moment, if you will, that you're involved in a horrible car accident. Your car flips over and you notice that fuel is dripping onto the ground and streaming towards an open flame. And you realize you are pinned by your arm and cannot get out. You know it's only a matter of time before the fuel reaches the flame and you will be done. You really have two choices here. Sit there and hope you are rescued before the fuel reaches the flame, or cut off your arm to escape, and although you will suffer, you also know you will survive. This analogy is very similar to what all the global nations are experiencing whose currencies are measured by the US dollar. Most nations are too weak and don't have the ability to sacrifice a limb, so they will ride it out and what will be, will be. But there are stronger nations who are able to make that sacrifice in order to survive this inevitable global economic meltdown by reducing or removing their economic dependency on the US dollar. One way to do this is to make pacts with other countries to buy or sell oil without the exchange of US dollars, which began in 1973 with a deal which was struck between Saudi Arabia and the United States, in which every barrel of oil purchased from the Saudis would be denominated in US dollars. Under this new arrangement, any country that sought to purchase oil from Saudi Arabia would be required to first exchange their own national currency for US dollars. In exchange for Saudi Arabia's willingness to denominate their oil sales exclusively in US dollars, the United States offered weapons and protection of their oil fields from neighboring nations, including Israel. By 1975, all of the OPEC nations had agreed to price their own oil supplies exclusively in US dollars in exchange for weapons and military protection. As the US dollar continued to lose purchasing power, several oil-producing countries began to question the wisdom of accepting increasingly worthless paper currency for their oil supplies. Today, several countries have attempted to move away or already have moved away from the petrodollar system. Examples include Iran, Syria, Venezuela, and North Korea, or the axis of evil. Additionally, other nations are choosing to use their own currencies for oil, like China, Russia, and India, amongst others. Yet another way to ensure your nation's economic survival is for them to no longer back their currencies with the US dollar, which has been an established standard practice since the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944, which established that world currencies would be pegged to the price of gold, and the US dollar was seen as a reserve currency linked to the price of gold.
Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States. Now, what is this action, which is very technical, what does it mean for you? Let me lay to rest the bugaboo of what is called devaluation. If you want to buy a foreign car or take a trip abroad, market conditions may cause your dollar to buy slightly less. But if you are among the overwhelming majority of Americans who buy American-made products in America, your dollar will be worth just as much tomorrow as it is today. The effect of this action, in other words, will be to stabilize the dollar. Now, this action will not win us any friends among the international money traders. But our primary concern is with the American workers and with fair competition around the world. To our friends abroad, including the many responsible members of the international banking community who are dedicated to stability in the flow of trade, I give this assurance. The United States has always been and will continue to be a forward-looking and trustworthy trading partner. In full cooperation with the International Monetary Fund and those who trade with us, we will press for the necessary reforms to set up an urgently needed new international monetary system. Stability and equal treatment is in everybody's best interest. I am determined that the American dollar must never again be a hostage in the hands of international speculators. As a result of these actions, the product of American labor will be more competitive, and the unfair edge that some of our foreign competition has will be removed. This is a major reason why our trade balance has eroded over the past 15 years.
If a nation can back up their own currencies with a world-required commodity such as oil or gold, they might be able to ride out the impending doom, and when it's all over, might even come out as the nation who is the new global economic leader. Russia, China, and Iran are actively promoting the abandonment for the use of the US dollar. Nations are already starting to economically collapse all over the world. Countries like Argentina, Venezuela, Greece, and Zimbabwe, just to name a few. Now let's talk about some countries clearly heading down this path. Brazil. It has the 7th largest economy on the entire planet, and it is already enduring one of its worst recessions in 25 years. Italy is currently dealing with a complete collapse of their Italian banking system. Italy's finance minister is scrambling to create a last resort bailout plan to save their failing system. Italy has the 8th largest economy on the planet. Just recently, it was reported that a major bail-in had just been announced for one of Austria's most prominent banks. Austria officially became the first European country to use the bail-in law. The Japanese economy is really struggling right now and barely hanging on. Japan has been leading an effort to support Southeast Asian nations by agreeing to provide access for the 10 members of the Association of the Southeast Asian Nations to draw up to 4 trillion yen or $40 billion during a financial crisis. Japan is obviously pushing the use of the yen with these 10 nations to abandon the use of the US dollar. Ireland was the first state in the Eurozone to enter recession, as declared by the Central Statistics Office. To prevent an insolvency situation, Portugal applied for bailout programs and has drawn a total of 79 billion euros. The country of Cyprus conducted a bail-in, taking funds from creditors and depositors to maintain bank solvency. Caribbean nations have been on the brink of economic collapse since the U.S. reporting requirements for foreign banks to thwart money laundering, tax evasion, and support for terrorism. Other than tourism, the banking industry is how many Caribbean nations survive. Greece. No Eurozone country has suffered more since the crash of 2008 than Greece. The EU is currently working on their third bailout plan. The South African currency, the rand, has lost 50% of its value over the past 5 years. And the list goes on. According to a new report from the Jubilee Debt Campaign, there are currently 24 countries in the world that are facing a full-blown debt crisis. Here's the list. It doesn't really matter how big your nation's economy is. The fact that today our global economy is extremely fragile and on the brink of a catastrophic global collapse. I believe that everything denominated in US dollars will dissolve to practically nothing during this monetary collapse. In order to survive this global financial calamity, you will need to possess something other than fiat or any investments that are denominated in fiat to retain your wealth. Precious metals have always been viewed as a safe haven for wealth retention, and right now silver is heavily underpriced, as evident by the unbalanced gold and silver ratio. So the best buy in the precious metals markets right now is silver. It offers a much better buy than gold, platinum, palladium, or copper. And this is why I stack silver. Now, I want to be very clear that when I refer to having precious metals as a safe haven for wealth retention, I mean the physical possession of those precious metals, not ETFs or even storing your precious metals with bullion vault storage companies. I literally mean having your silver in hand. If you don't hold it, then you don't own it. If you are concerned about how to keep your physical possession of precious metals safe, view my 4-part video series, Is Your Silver Bullion Safe? I will place it in the comment section below. It will go into great detail on how to keep your bullion safe. A big thank you to all who support this channel and watch my content. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button and then the notification bell to ensure you receive a notice as soon as I post up new content. Feel free to comment, like, and share the content as well. Stop by and visit my webpage at silvertorch66.com. There you will find silver videos, a huge silver picture gallery, silver stacking related stories in the blog section, a music page containing many of the background tracks used in my YouTube videos, and even some silver for sale. So check it out at silvertorch66.com.